when we come to the term Christian. And as I said, we will spend a great deal of time next week looking at just this term, Christian. That's going to be part 2 of this lesson. This morning, let's just notice Acts chapter 11 and verse 26. And when he had found him, he brought him to Antioch. So it was that for a whole year they assembled with the church and taught a great many people, and the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. Have you ever heard anybody say that the term Christian was first used derogatorily and was first used by unbelievers as a derogatory statement of believers? Now, how in the world would that be a derogatory term? For somebody, say I'm a brother there at Antioch, and somebody comes up to me and says, "Oh, you're a Christian, aren't you?" How in the world is that going to be derogatory to me? That's going to be honorable, is it? Is it not? So this idea that the term Christian came from a derogatory use of the word, might it be that the term Christian was being used by the disciples at Antioch in an honorable way, in a way that glorified God through Christ, as we saw in 1 Peter 4:11? And so the others that heard them using the term Christian for themselves began to use it derogatorily. And so the historians say, "Oh, look, it's a derogatory term." When we look at it next week, we're going to see that it was not a derogatory term. It was prophesied that they were going to be called by this term. And the use of this term is the fulfillment of prophecy. Because of all of these terms, Christians is the new name. See, these are terms that have been used for God's people throughout. Only Christian is the new one. And not what Isaiah said, they'll be called by a new name? Well, we'll look at that in more detail next week. But again, all of these terms referring to those who have obeyed the gospel of Christ. You cannot be a Christian. I am not going to refer to somebody as a Christian that has not believed and been baptized, that is not a close follower of what Jesus teaches as a disciple of Christ, who is not a brother in the household of God because they've not been baptized into the body by one Spirit. I'm not going to refer to someone as a Christian who's not of the way. I'm not going to refer to someone who's as a Christian who's not a saint, who's not a child of God, who's not an elect of God. And for people to, you hear people get up on the news and they refer to Jeremiah Wright, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. What in the world is reverend about that man? And they refer to him as a Christian. How in the world are you going to call him a Christian when Christian means one who belongs to Christ? He doesn't no more belong to Christ than the Pope does, than Osama bin Laden does. And I'm not going to call them a Christian if they don't belong to Christ. People can get upset about that. I hope that they're getting upset about that will cause them to obey the gospel because they want to be a Christian. But they're getting upset about it isn't going to cause me to call them a Christian.